Hi guys, it's David here from Right On Resources, and this video is actually a sample lesson taken from our test resource page. So if you'd like this lesson, or if you'd like to look more into Macbeth or any other specific characters, then please do check it out. You'll find a link to it in the description below. So this video is going to focus specifically on the character of Lady Macbeth and the theme of power. So we're going to have a look at a very important extract, and we're also going to have a look at a few of the contextual factors that affect our understanding of the play. So to get us started then, what is context and why is it so important? So you've probably heard your teacher going on about this quite a bit, because it's an extremely important thing that you need to be embedding when you're actually doing your exam response. So context is the information that surrounds the novel or the play. It's things like the setting and the background that's usually based on the real world events. So the context in terms of Macbeth would be things like Scotland, the superstitions or the religious beliefs that are occurring during the time that the play was written. It's important to remember that Macbeth was written in 1606, so it's really important to understand the context surrounding the play. So if you think about it being written in 1606, it's a vastly different period of time compared to now. The context helps provide us some meaning and clarity behind a lot of the messages within the play. The clues in literacy work create a relationship between the writer and the reader, giving us a deeper understanding of the intent behind the words and things like that. So if we don't understand the beliefs or the traditions surrounding the play, it's going to be very hard to make a detailed inference whenever you're analysing the text. Now we're going to take a look at a few pieces of key contextual information surrounding women during the time that the play was written. So first thing to point out is that Macbeth was written during the Elizabethan era. During this period, women had very few rights. They were considered the property of their fathers or their brothers and were not allowed to own property. So again, when you think about that as a basic human right that we have these days, they weren't even allowed to own their own home. The only way they would do that would be by remaining with their father or by getting married. Women were allowed to marry at 12 years old, so think about how shocking that is by today's standards. Normally these were women from wealthy families. This was often done because the fathers or the brothers would be looking to strengthen their family bond or their family name, and they'd marry them off to another family, so the woman wouldn't even get a choice with this normally. Women were considered to be less intelligent than males. This is obviously something that we know not to be true these days. Women were expected to be subservient to men, and what we mean by this word subservient, we mean that they were considered to be less than men, so they were deemed to be having to be constantly respectful and just follow orders generally given to them by men. So it wouldn't be normal, for example, for a woman to speak back or to be rude towards a man, because they would be considered less than a man during this time. Books and literature written during the time encouraged women to be silent and obedient to male authority. So it wasn't just that this was something that was done in homes or small pockets within the country. This was an overwhelming idea of women during the time. Okay, so it wasn't just that it was a few places that women didn't have many rights. It was all across the UK. So think about how the lack of respect that people would have had for women during the time, and the lack of power that they actually would have had. Look at the extract below and attempt the challenges that follow. So as you can see there, this is quite a famous extract from Macbeth. You've probably looked at it before, but it's really important to keep going back over this and revising it, because it might be something that comes up in the exam. So it says, "Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised, yet I do fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. What thou wouldest highly." So now that we've actually read through and had a look at this key moment within the play, have a look at the challenges now on the right hand side. So if you'd like to pause the video here and to spend a bit more time going through the challenges on your own, please feel free to do so. And now I'm just going to talk through them. So first of all, the challenge. Explain what is happening in this section of the play. So hopefully you know that this is where Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are talking about their plans and their ambitions in order to get Macbeth onto the throne. Annotate the extract identifying key quotations. So this is actually a really fantastic part of the text to be looking at because there are many quotations that we can talk about there, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. And the mega challenge, prepare a response for the following question. How has the character of Lady Macbeth been presented here and elsewhere in the play? Now, when you're faced with a question like this, it is important to annotate it as well to understand what the main focus of the question is. So we can see there that the main focus of the question is actually the character of Lady Macbeth, which we're going to go and look into a little bit more detail in the rest of this video. And also, it gives you a fantastic opportunity to strengthen your response by talking about elsewhere in the play, by demonstrating that you understand the text and that you've been able to remember some key and important quotations. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on and have a look at the annotations that you could make on this extract. So now we're going to go through, we're going to annotate the same extract that we just looked at a moment ago. We've got our exam question here in the right hand corner, so that should always be something that is thought about carefully whenever you're making annotations. So obviously this is a conversation that's happening between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and Lady Macbeth is speaking about her husband. So first of all, we're going to understand what it is she's trying to say and what is it she's trying to communicate to her husband. So first of all, Glamis thou art and Cawdor and shalt be. So Macbeth is Thane of Cawdor, which is essentially a lord, and is also the Thane of Glamis as well. So, and shalt be what thou art promised. If you think about what has come previously in the play, Macbeth has been visited by 3 witches who has made a prophecy to say that he will become the new king. We look at this bit at the bottom here. Art not without ambition, but without the illness that should attend it, what thou wouldest highly. So what Lady Macbeth is saying there is that Macbeth has ambition, but lacks the evil quality to fully attain or achieve his goals. This is a really interesting and potentially the most important part. Yet I do fear thy nature, it is too full of the milk of human kindness. So first of all, we know that Lady Macbeth is worried that he doesn't have what it takes. So this is quite a strange thing for a woman to say to a man during the time, especially a wife to say to her husband, because she's saying that she worries that he doesn't have what it takes. It's kind of questioning his masculinity here. And he's too full of the milk of human kindness. So Macbeth is too kind to strike at the first opportunity. And when we look at how she's actually phrased it here, you're too full of the milk of human kindness. Now that's quite a strange way to refer to it. I mean, we're not really full of milk, but if you think about the connotations and the associations we have with that, milk is white, it is associated with pureness and holy and right things to do. But it's also something that we give to babies to nourish them and to protect them. So it's kind of a double insult, really. It's saying that he's too good, is not really as vicious or as aggressive as he needs to be to become king. It might be a slight jab at him saying, you know, you're quite childish, you're quite immature, that you can't really act the way you need to act in order to achieve what you want to achieve. So if we have a look at some of the key quotations, we're thinking about Lady Macbeth as a whole, so not just the extract that we looked at there. We're going to also think about some of the key quotations. So if you have a look at some of the quotations here, these are some of the main ones that you should be aware of. So I'm going to read through them. I want you to pause the video now and just see if you can figure out what goes into the blank spaces. So the first one says, come you something that tend on mortal thoughts, something me here. So think about what words might go into those spaces. The next one says, look like the innocent something, but be like the something under it. Number 3, 'tis the eye of something that fears a painted something. And the final one, fill me from the crown to the top toe full of something something. So again, what I'd like you to do is have a look at each of these key quotations, see if you can remember what goes into the blank spaces, because these are really important ones relating to both Lady Macbeth and also the theme of power. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk through the answers. So whenever we say the inference, what we infer from it is simply saying what is the meaning behind the quotation. We're also going to think about how this affects the reader, and if we can, we're going to try to link it to the context of the play as well. Now we're going to have a look at the quotations with all the missing parts filled in. So as you can see there on the left hand side, we have all of the quotations fully formed. A good idea to do is to go back and revisit this time and again just to practice your memory of some of the key quotations. The more confident you are with these and the more you remember, the more likely you are to be able to recall them when you come to do your exam. So if we have a look at the first quotation then, "Come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here." Now a lot of people think that this means that she wants to be a man. However, what I would infer from this, because she's saying unsex me, that she doesn't want to be either male or female, but she's asking these evil spirits to make her simply genderless, to not have any weakness possessed by man or woman. You can see here when I'm writing my inference that I'm just abbreviating the name Lady Macbeth to Alem, just making that a little bit easier for me when I'm making my annotations and making my notes. The second one then, potentially the most famous quotation from Lady Macbeth: "Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it." So if you think about what we associate with flowers, they're something beautiful, they're unassuming, something we don't associate with danger, but at the same time you've got this contrast here of her telling him to be a serpent underneath it. So we normally associate serpents with evil and things like that, so what we can infer from this is that Lady Macbeth is telling Macbeth to be two-faced, so to be nice on one side but secretly to be horrible and to have these cruel intentions. Number 3, "'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil." Now this is one that's a little bit more obscure, not many people tend to remember this one, but it's a really important one that you can use, especially when it talks about the level of manipulation that Lady Macbeth holds over her husband. So Lady Macbeth is implying that Macbeth is acting like a scared child. Again, she's trying to manipulate him, she's trying to twist him round her little finger so that she will do what he wants to, by kind of calling his manhood or his sense of being an adult or being a proper man into question. And the final one, "Fill me from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty." So Lady Macbeth wants to be filled with potential to carry out evil deeds that her gender prevents her from carrying out. This is a really interesting one to consider when we're thinking about the effects on the reader, because they're going to react in a really negative way here. Remember, she's talking to things like evil spirits and the devil, and this is something that the audience would have believed in at the time, so it would have been quite shocking and even appalling to the audience at the time. Now if we have a look at the reader effect or context, you're not always going to be able to make a link to context, but if you can make an appropriate link, then it will certainly help your marks when you come to write your exam response. So for the first one, again it's that quotation, "Come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here." And what we can say about this is that this goes against the expectations of women at the time and would have caused shock. So think back to the contextual information we looked at earlier on in the video and think about how an audience would have reacted to the kind of things that she's saying. So for the next one, "Look like the innocent flower but be the serpent under it." So again, the reader would be shocked that Lady Macbeth would be able to instruct or make commands of her husband. Remember that women were supposed to be subservient to men. The idea that she's speaking out against her husband would have been very dramatic, but it also helps to illustrate just how powerful and strong a character that Lady Macbeth really is. The third one, "'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil." So the reader would be aware of Lady Macbeth's strong character and attempts to manipulate Macbeth. She knows that referring to him like a child is going to attack his manhood, and he's going to feel very self-conscious about that, and therefore is going to be more likely to come round to her way of thinking. The final one, "Fill me from the crown to the top toe full of direst cruelty." And for this one we can say, the audience would be shocked and appalled at the evil intentions towards regicide. Now this is an extremely important word here. We've got at the bottom here at the very last part of the table. Regicide means committing the sin of killing your king. Okay, so if you think about other ones like suicide is where you kill yourself. Regicide is where you kill your king, which is considered to be a mortal sin, especially back in the Shakespearean era as well. Now that we've had a look at the contextual factors that affect this part of the play and also some of the key quotations, have a look at actually responding to the exam question below. So the question is, how has the character of Lady Macbeth been presented here and elsewhere in the play? In order to help structure and plan your response, have a look at the response checklist on the right hand side. So the things you need to be aware of are, have you used a relevant quotation? So again, look back at the quotes that we had from the table. You might even remember other quotations that you can use from elsewhere in the play, and think, are you using the best quotations to help justify your response? Comment on the effect of your evidence. So if you're using a quote, that's fantastic, but you need to actually explain the relevance of that quotation. Respond appropriately to the question. So this one can be a bit of a difficult one considering the extract we just looked at. It does speak a lot about Macbeth, but the real crux of the question is about Lady Macbeth. Have you made an appropriate point? So are you actually making an argument or expressing your point of view in a clear and logical way? And the last one, indicate a clear knowledge and understanding of the play. So by the time you actually come to do your exams, you should have a really good in-depth knowledge of the play, and this is something that you should actually try and communicate to the examiner to let them know that you really understand the play in and out. Now we're going to take a look at a real-life response to this question. So as we have a look through the response, think about the challenges on the right-hand side. So I'm going to read through it in a moment. As I do, have a think about the challenges that you're going to attempt in a moment. So the first one, read through the response and identify what works well and what needs to be improved. The super challenge, how could this response be linked back to the context of the play? And the mega challenge, the final one, use this response as a starting point to write your own example to the exam question. And again, the exam question is just up there at the top. How has the character of Lady Macbeth been presented here and elsewhere in the play? So the response says, Shakespeare has presented Lady Macbeth as intelligent and scheming. This is evident in the quote, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. This shows that Lady Macbeth is telling Macbeth to be two-faced. Additionally, the noun serpent implies that Macbeth will need to be evil and commit sinful acts if he is to become king. So think about the normal structure that you follow whenever you're responding to an exam response. Have a look at the challenges and pause the video if you'd like to spend more time working through these on your own. We're now going to go ahead and have a look at an extension task to help consolidate your learning and just show a real good understanding of some of the key aspects of the play. Now we're going to have a look at a few key questions that will help ascertain your understanding of the play as a whole. If you're not too sure about them at the moment, don't worry about it too much. You can always come back and revisit the questions, but some of these are a little bit obscure. So if we have a look at the first one, what is the name of Macbeth's father? Now this is something that's mentioned right at the start of the play, so if you're not sure, it might be worth having a look back just to find out his name. Number 2, Duncan and Macbeth are kin. What does the term kin mean? So again, this is a phrase or a term that we don't really use these days. So what does it mean, or what does it reveal about the relationship of Duncan and Macbeth? Number 3, what does Lady Macbeth claim is in the way of Macbeth's ambition? Number 4, recall one way the play Macbeth challenges gender stereotypes. So if you think about what we've covered in this video, we were looking at the character of Lady Macbeth. Think about the things we talked about in terms of the context and see if it actually matches up with the way that she's presented in the play. I'm now going to go ahead and reveal the answers. So again, if you want to pause it and spend more time working through these questions, please feel free to do so. Now we're going to go through some of the answers to the questions we just looked at. So check your answers against the ones below. So the first question asked us, what is the name of Macbeth's father? Macbeth's father is called Sinel. Number 2 asked us, what is meant by the word kin? Because Macbeth and Duncan are classed as kin. So kin is a word that refers to a family or a relation. So think about the implication of that Macbeth is not only willing to commit the sinful act of regicide, but is also willing to harm a member of his own family as well. Question 3. What does Lady Macbeth claim is in the way of Macbeth's ambition? So again, we're thinking about the extract that we looked at a moment ago. Lady Macbeth claims Macbeth is too kind and lacks the cruelty of nature to kill King Duncan. Number 4. The play does actually challenge gender stereotypes of the time by having Lady Macbeth as a confident, intelligent woman who is able to control her husband. Again, this links back all to the context that we looked at the start of the video, and think about how that is actually in stark contrast to the way that we perceive the character of Lady Macbeth, who is really strong and really confident in the way that she controls her husband. That brings us to the end of this video lesson. Hopefully you found it useful and it helped you to gain an understanding of some of the key quotations and the context surrounding the play. If you need any additional support or help, the new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment, like and subscribe. It really helps us out when you do so. You can also check out Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English, or check out our test page by simply searching for Right On Resources. Thanks guys, and best of luck with all of your revision in the future.